You must understand, our worlds are not so different.
But how can I be sure?
The moment the guards lowered their rifles, Jace knew his life was about to end. Or begin. He just didn't know which yet. He'd been pulled off a cargo skiff in orbit, shackled with humming energy cuffs, and marched through gates taller than city towers. Everyone around him bowed as a luminous procession passed. Everyone except him. And that was the mistake. Because when the alien woman at the center of it all stopped, when her eyes locked onto his, the entire royal court froze. Jace Mercer wasn't a diplomat. He wasn't a spy. He was a deep space salvage technician who spent his days stripping broken cruisers for scrap in forgotten systems. He smelled faintly of engine grease and burnt ozone. He was not supposed to be standing in the Hall of Thousand Suns while an empire held its breath. The woman stepped closer. Her skin shimmered with subtle constellations, like the night sky had learned to breathe. Her eyes were not human, not quite, too deep, too knowing. Power rolled off her in waves Jace felt in his bones. "Why does the servant stare at me like a storm about to break?" she asked softly. The word hit him harder than the cuffs. Servant? Around them, nobles stiffened. Advisors murmured. Generals reached for weapons that could end planets. Jace opened his mouth to explain. Nothing came out. She lifted a single glowing finger, silencing the entire chamber. "You will speak when I command it." Her gaze never left him. The escort officer leaned in, whispering furiously to another. Jace caught fragments. Designation error. Human caste protocols. She chose him. Chose him for what? He was escorted. No. Escorted was too gentle. He was claimed. Walked behind her as though on invisible chains. Deeper into the citadel of Lyris Prime. Heart pounding so loudly, he was certain the alien aristocracy could hear it. The corridors were lined with floating sigils and whispering crystal banners. This was not a place meant for humans. This was the core of the Aurelian Dominion, the most feared empire in this quadrant of HFY Sci-Fi tales. And somehow, a junk-hauling nobody had just been named something called the Servant. They stopped in a chamber that looked carved from living light. The woman turned. Slowly. "You will stand here," she said. Jace stood. "Look at me." He did. Her expression softened in a way that felt dangerous. "Do you know what happens to those I choose?" He shook his head, the cuffs humming with his pulse. "They become mine." The words echoed, ancient and final. A device descended from the ceiling, scanning him. Data rippled across the air, biometrics, neural maps, genetic markers. The chamber reacted to him like he belonged there. She watched every flicker with unsettling fascination. "You are not what you are supposed to be," she murmured. "Your mind resists my fields. Your heart does not submit." Jay swallowed. "Ma'am, I think there's been a—" She stepped closer, close enough that the constellations in her skin reflected in his eyes. "Do not lie," she said. "The universe does not make mistakes." His cuffs disengaged with a sharp crackle. The guard stiffened. She placed her hand over his chest. The chamber's lights flared. He felt it then. A pressure, not on his body, but on his will. Something probing, measuring, testing. He fought it. Not intentionally. It was instinct. Years of surviving vacuum breaches, pirate ambushes, and black hole storms had hardened something inside him that refused to bend. The Star Queen, because that was what she was, gasped. The entire palace trembled. Her eyes widened, not in anger, in wonder. "No one resists me," she whispered. "No one." Jace staggered back, heart hammering. Alarms began to sing in alien harmonics. Outside the chamber, weapons powered up, and yet she was smiling. "You will not leave my side," she said. "Not until I understand what you are." The door sealed. "Hold on, before we get into the real stuff. I want to know, what are you doing at this exact moment while hearing my voice? I love seeing your answers down below in the comments." Jace had no idea he'd just become the most dangerous anomaly in the galaxy. Jace did not sleep that night. Not because the chamber they locked him into was uncomfortable. It was the opposite. The bed molded itself to his shape. Temperature perfect. Air filtered to taste like fresh rain. But luxury is meaningless when you suspect you're about to be dissected by royalty. The mini-hook wasn't the room. It was the silence. The Citadel never truly slept. Somewhere beyond the iridescent walls, an entire alien empire was breathing, whispering, plotting. And somewhere in that breathing maze, the Star Queen, her real name still unknown to him, was deciding what to do with the human who didn't bow. A soft chime vibrated through the room. The wall dissolved into light. She entered alone. No guards. No advisors. No weapons that he could see. She wore a simpler form this time, robes of dark silver that pulsed faintly in time with her heartbeat. Her power didn't feel smaller. It felt closer. "You should be afraid," she said. "Your pulse says you are. But your eyes tell another story." Jace forced himself to stand. "I don't even know your name." "Names are for equals," she replied. "But you may call me Sovereign Lasara." HFY Sci-Fi tales always talked about alien rulers as distant monsters or enlightened gods. Lasara was neither. She was too curious, too human in the wrong places. She circled him, slow, deliberate. "You resisted my dominion field," she said. "Not by force. By nature. Humans should fold. Your species always does." That stung more than he expected. "Maybe you just haven't met the right ones," Jace muttered. Her lips twitched. An interface unfolded between them, displaying his salvager registry, his criminally underpaid contracts, the half-forgotten systems he'd bled in. "You survive where others do not," she observed. "Vacuum exposure, neural overload, gravitic storms." She looked at him, eyes narrowing. "Why?" Jace hesitated. Every story from Earth's old HFY channels flooded his mind. Humanity, fragile, stubborn, impossible to kill. "I don't know," he said. "I just don't quit." The room vibrated faintly, as though the Citadel itself reacted. "That is not an answer," she said softly, "but it is enough to begin." The air shifted. He felt it before he saw it, pressure curling around his thoughts again, but gentler this time, like someone testing the temperature of water before stepping in. He clenched his jaw. The pressure met resistance. Lasara froze. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. "You're blocking me," she whispered. "I'm not doing anything," Jace said. "That's just how my head works." She pulled back sharply, breath unsteady. Outside, distant alarms chimed, then stopped, as if afraid of being noticed. "You are not a servant," she said. "Well, that's a relief." She didn't smile this time. "You are a destabilization." That word landed heavier than any threat. She waved her hand, and the room transformed, becoming a holographic map of the Dominion. Thousands of systems, all bound by glowing threads leading back to her. "My consciousness touches every strand," Lasara said. "I feel disobedience as pain. Doubt as fracture." She met his eyes again. "When I touched you, it was like staring into a mirror that refused to reflect me." Jace stared at the glowing galaxy. "So what now?" The threads around one small sector began to flicker violently. "My empire is not as united as it appears," she said. "There are factions who believe I have grown distracted." The map zoomed in on a cluster near the outer rim. "They will come for you." His stomach dropped. "For me? For what you represent?" she corrected. "A flaw. A possibility." The walls shuddered suddenly as something heavy impacted the Citadel's shields. Red sigils erupted across the hologram. "Too soon," Lasara breathed. Jace grabbed the edge of the bed to steady himself. "What is happening?" "A test," she said, "to see if I am still worthy." Another impact. Closer. She turned to him, and for the first time, he saw something like fear. "You are coming with me," she said. He didn't have time to argue. The floor dissolved into light beneath their feet, and they fell. They didn't fall through space. They fell through memory. One moment Jace felt the solid reality of the Citadel beneath his boots. The next, the universe twisted sideways and unfolded into a corridor made of light and echoing thoughts. The air smelled like ozone and forgotten dreams. Lasara gripped his arm with a strength that had nothing to do with muscle. "Do not let go," she commanded, as if he had a choice. The mini-hook was not the sensation of falling. It was the sound of voices inside his skull. Not whispers, Not hallucinations. An entire civilization humming in layered harmonics, each note vibrating with intent. He realized with dawning terror that he was inside the sovereign's mind space, some internal network that bound her empire together. "This is not for your kind," Lasara said through clenched teeth. "Your neural structure should be dissolving." Jace tried to reply, but his mouth didn't work here. Instead, his thoughts pushed outward. He remembered crawling through a burning freighter, lungs screaming, refusing to die because a crew of 6 were still trapped behind him. The corridor around them rippled. Lasara staggered. "What did you just do?" she demanded. "I thought about not quitting." That is not how the continuum functions. Ahead, the corridor fractured. Dark shapes bled through the walls, like silhouettes made of static and malice. Rebels, not soldiers in armor, but psychic constructs, fragments of dissenting minds weaponized against their own ruler. HFY Sci-Fi Tales had prepared him for plasma rifles, not for hatred shaped into geometry. "They have breached my inner domain," Lasara said. "They should not be able to follow me here." One of the shapes lunged. Jace reacted without thinking. He stepped in front of her. The construct slammed into him and shattered like glass. Silence rang. Lasara stared at the empty space where it had been. "You dispersed it." "I didn't mean to." "You erased a dominion shade," she whispered. "Those are composed of pure dissent." Another lunged. Then another. Jace braced himself, heart pounding. The pressure in his skull intensified, but he refused to retreat. He imagined standing his ground against vacuum storms, against pirates, against the endless dark that had tried to swallow him his entire life. The corridor brightened. The next shade disintegrated before touching him. The others recoiled. Lasara's eyes glowed with an intensity that eclipsed the corridor itself. "You are not merely resisting," she said. "You are overriding." A surge of alien fury rippled through the mind space as the rebels retreated, the corridor knitting itself whole behind them. They emerged onto a platform, suspended over a star-filled abyss. Jace collapsed to one knee, breathing hard even though he wasn't sure lungs were required here. Lasara stood motionless. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, "My people believe humanity is obsolete, emotionally unstable, useful only for labor." She turned to him slowly. "You just rewrote a weaponized rebellion with stubbornness." He laughed weakly. "That's kind of our thing." The platform shimmered and reassembled into a secluded chamber deep beneath the citadel, far from prying minds. Real air filled his lungs again. Real gravity pulled at his limbs. Outside, the citadel trembled. "Your presence inside me will be noticed," Lasara said quietly. "Already, the council is demanding explanations." Jace pushed himself upright. "Then send me home." Her gaze softened, then hardened in the same breath. "I cannot." "Won't," he corrected. "No," she said. "Cannot. If they take you, they will carve you apart until they understand why I cannot command you. And when they do not find the answer they want." She trailed off. He didn't need her to finish. "You're keeping me prisoner," he said. "I am keeping you alive." The lights flickered. A presence pressed against the chamber's defenses, vast, cold, surgical. "The high adjudicators," Lasara murmured. "They govern obedience. They do not tolerate anomalies." A holographic window snapped open, revealing 3 towering figures, formed of crystalline lattices and pure authority. "Sovereign Lasara," they intoned in unison. "Explain the disturbance in the continuum." Her posture straightened. The softness vanished. "There's no disturbance," she said. "Only adaptation." Their multifaceted eyes shifted to Jace. "Identify the human asset." Jace felt something inside him coil. He didn't wait for Lasara to speak. "I'm not your asset," he said aloud, voice echoing strangely in the chamber. "I'm a mechanic who just wants to go home." The chamber went deathly still. The adjudicators studied him in silence, so heavy it felt like gravity doubling. Lasara inhaled sharply. He'd spoken out of turn. He'd broken protocol in the heart of an alien empire. At last, the tallest adjudicator spoke. "Your designation will be determined." Energy laced the air, preparing to seize him. Lasara stepped between them. "If you touch him," she said softly. You will fracture the Dominion beyond repair. The chamber shook, and Jace realized the Star Queen was no longer sure she was in control. The High Adjudicators did not move. They did something worse. They smiled, not with mouths, but with geometry. Patterns of light bending into shapes that communicated satisfaction far more clearly than any human expression ever could. Jace felt a chill crawl down his spine. Your resistance is noted, Sovereign Lasara, they said, but your attachment to this human destabilizes your governance. The chamber's shield hummed louder, as if the citadel itself were bracing for an argument that might rip it apart. Lasara did not retreat. My governance has never been stronger, she replied. The Dominion expands. The border wars are ending. The inner systems are unified. And yet, the adjudicators intoned, you now host an anomaly inside your mind space. Their gaze sharpened on Jace. Human Mercer, your presence correlates with rising fluctuations across the continuum. Jace swallowed. That sounds like a you problem. One of the crystalline forms rotated, processing his words. It is becoming a Dominion problem. The mini-hook was not the threat. It was the subtle shift in Lasara's breathing. She was afraid. Not for the Empire. For him. You are requesting authority to detain him, she said. We are claiming authority. They corrected. By Dominion statute, anomalies are neutralized. Jace felt invisible hands brush against his thoughts. Testing. He clenched his fists, focusing on the stubborn core inside him that had carried him through every impossible job. He imagined an engine refusing to start until he threatened it. He imagined holding a hull breach shut with his own body. The pressure met resistance. The adjudicators flickered. That should not be possible. One murmured. Lasara seized the moment. She reached out, not to him, but to the chamber itself. Symbols flared across the walls, ancient and powerful. This human is under my personal protection, she declared, by right of sovereign claim. The word slammed into the chamber like a verdict. The adjudicators recoiled a fraction. You invoke archaic law, they said. Such rights have not been exercised since the first expansion. Then consider this a reminder, Lasara said. Jace turned to her. What did you just do? I bound your fate to mine, she answered quietly. If they move against you, they move against me. The crystal figures pulsed, calculating. Your emotional compromise is now quantifiable. I am not compromised, Lasara snapped. I am evolving. The adjudicator's attention returned to Jace. Human Mercer, you will accompany us for assessment. No, Lasara said at the same time Jace did. The room vibrated, the citadel groaning under the psychic strain. One adjudicator extended a filament of light toward Jace. Before it could reach him, Jace stepped forward. Every instinct screamed at him to run. He didn't. He stared into the alien construct and let his mind open. Not in surrender, but in challenge. I'm not your variable, he said. I'm your wake-up call. The filament shattered like ice. The chamber erupted in blinding light. The adjudicators reeled, their perfect geometry warping as if reality itself were refusing their presence. Lasara stared at Jace as though seeing him for the first time. What are you? She whispered. I told you, he said, breath ragged. I don't quit. The high adjudicators withdrew several meters, reconfiguring. This human's integration potential exceeds projected parameters, they said. Containment is now mandatory. Containment sounded worse than neutralization. Lasara turned sharply to Jace. They will not stop, she said. Not now. Then what? He asked. Her jaw tightened. Then we leave. The word hung in the air, impossible. Leave the citadel? Jace asked. The Dominion, she corrected. The chamber flickered, revealing hidden passageways forming in the walls, like veins opening. They will brand you a traitor, Jace said. They already have, she replied softly. They just haven't admitted it to themselves yet. Alarms began to scream throughout the citadel, deep, resonant tones that made Jace's bones ache. Security breach in the sovereign core. An automated voice intoned an alien cadence. The adjudicators surged forward again, enraged. Lasara grabbed Jace's wrist. Her touch was no longer probing. It was desperate. Do you trust me? She asked. He laughed once, short and breathless. I don't even trust gravity anymore. That will have to be enough. The floor peeled open beneath them, revealing a shaft of swirling light descending into darkness. As Dominion enforcers poured into the chamber, weapons blazing with impossible colors, Lasara pulled him forward. They jumped. Jace had just become the most wanted human in the galaxy. They didn't fall this time. They were fired. The shaft hurled them downward at impossible speed, layers of the citadel screaming past, like pages torn from reality. Jace's stomach tried to escape his body. Lasara's grip never loosened. The mini-hook wasn't the velocity. It was the way the citadel tried to close behind them. Panels sealed. Light collapsed inward. The Sovereign Core was attempting to erase their path, as if they had never existed. Hold your breath, Lasara said. Why? Space inverted. The shaft spat them into a cavern of living metal far beneath the citadel, where gravity bent like a drunk trying to stand upright. Jace slammed onto a platform that pulsed softly, absorbing the impact. He gasped. The air here was cold, sharp, laced with ozone. What is this place? He croaked. My private transit nexus, Lasara replied. It was designed for one mind, not two. Above them, the cavern's ceiling rippled. Shapes formed, Dominion drones, sleek and predatory, sliding through the fabric of the structure itself. They followed us. Jace said. Yes, she agreed. They always do. She dragged him toward a crescent-shaped vessel embedded in the cavern wall. It looked less like a ship and more like a thought that had decided to exist physically. As they ran, the air thickened. Jace felt invisible pressure pressing inward, trying to compress him into compliance. They're reasserting the continuum, Lasara said through clenched teeth, trying to override you. Jace stumbled. The pressure sharpened, stabbing at his memories, dredging up failures he'd buried years ago. Ships he couldn't save, people he'd watched die. He nearly went down. Then he remembered the day he'd sealed a breach with nothing but duct tape and spite. The pressure wavered. He growled under his breath and took another step. Then another. Lasara looked back, astonishment breaking through her composure. You are pushing back. Story of my life, he said. The drones fired, not beams. Intent. A wave of absolute authority surged toward them, promising peace if he would just stop. Jace planted his feet and screamed. Not out loud. Inside. Every stubborn refusal he'd ever lived by. Every moment he'd been told he wasn't enough, and survived anyway. The wave broke around him. The cavern shuddered violently. Drones slammed into the walls like insects hitting a windshield. Lasara stared at him as though he were rewriting the laws of her universe. They reached the vessel. It peeled open at her touch, the interior blooming with starfield projections and alien instrumentation. She shoved him inside. Sit. Do not touch anything. He collapsed into a chair that adjusted instantly to his frame. What about you? He asked. She paused at the threshold, eyes distant. If they cut my link to the Dominion, I will lose much. Before he could respond, she entered and the vessel sealed. The cavern disintegrated around them as the ship detached from reality itself. Jace felt weightless. The starfield warped into a tunnel of impossible color. Then silence. They emerged into open space at the fringe of a dead system, far from any known jump routes. The ship stabilized, lights dimming. Lasara leaned heavily against the console, breathing hard. Are we out? Jace asked. For now, she said, but my absence will be felt. What does that mean? He asked. She looked at him, expression unreadable. Every being in the Dominion is connected to me. My thoughts stabilize them. My presence orders chaos. And now, she said quietly, they are alone. The implication settled like a weight in his gut. He hadn't just helped her escape. He destabilized an empire. Outside the viewport, the stars seemed colder somehow. So what am I? He asked. A weapon. A virus. Her gaze softened. You are a mirror. You show me what I am without the Dominion's voice in my head. He laughed weakly. That's flattering in a terrifying way. A console flared to life beside her, streaming fragmented reports, systems flickering, governors issuing emergency protocols. rebellion signals spiking across the continuum. The high adjudicators will rally the fleets, Lasara said. They will declare me unfit to rule. And you? Jace asked. She straightened slowly. I will return, she said. Not as they expect. The ship lurched suddenly. Warning tones chimed. Jace gripped the chair. That doesn't sound like for now. Lasara's eyes narrowed at the sensor display. They found us faster than I calculated. The starfield ahead distorted, a massive silhouette tearing itself out of folded space. Dominion interdiction cruiser, bristling with weapons designed to neutralize gods. Jace's heart hammered. So, he said, forcing a shaky grin. Any more secret escape tunnels in your back pocket? Lasara did not smile back. No, she said, but I have you. The cruiser's weapons began to charge. The interdiction cruiser filled the viewport like a moving continent. Jace had seen warships before, pirate dreadnoughts, corporate gun haulers, even a fringe world battleship once. But this was something else. The hull glowed with layered sigils that pulsed in synchronized rhythm, each one a node of the Dominion's will. The mini-hook wasn't the ship. It was the way Lasara went still, her shoulders squared, spine straightening as if she were donning an invisible crown. The softness he'd glimpsed vanished, replaced by something ancient and terrible. They are not here to kill us, she said calmly. They are here to correct me. That sounds worse, Jace replied. The cruiser's comm channel forced its way into their systems. The voice that emerged was not singular. It was a chorus tuned to perfect obedience. Sovereign Lasara, by unanimous decree of the high adjudicators, your cognitive autonomy is suspended. Submit to reintegration. Jace felt pressure building in his skull again, stronger than ever. The ship's lights dimmed as the cruiser began projecting a Dominion field through vacuum itself. Lasara closed her eyes. I will not return to a cage, she whispered. The pressure intensified. Jace gritted his teeth, blood trickling from his nose. He could feel something trying to peel him open from the inside, like hands searching for levers in his mind. You don't get to decide that, he growled. He pushed back. Not with thought, with memory, with grit, with every human story that said survival was not granted. It was taken. The vessel shook violently. The Dominion field faltered, its perfect harmonics warping into static. On the viewport, the interdiction cruiser's sigils flickered. Lasara's eyes snapped open. They are losing coherence, she said in disbelief. You are interfering with their synchronization. I'm just being difficult, Jace said through clenched teeth. The chorus voice stuttered, breaking into fragmented tones. Anomaly escalation. Human Mercer, you are ordered to cease resistance. Make me, he spat. The ship lurched as a gravitational lance fired past their hull, missing by meters. Lasara moved, hands flying over controls that reshaped themselves to her touch. The vessel twisted through folded microspace, dodging the next volley by bending reality sideways. Your defiance is contagious, she said. My systems are aligning with you. That's a sentence I never expected to hear. She glanced at him, something dangerously close to a smile tugging at her lips. The cruiser adapted. Its bow split open, revealing a core of blinding white light, the Dominion anchor. If it locked onto them, there would be no running. It would drag Lasara's mind back into the continuum and tear Jace apart in the process. Lasara hesitated, hands hovering. I can overload the anchor, she said, but it will sever my remaining links to the Dominion permanently. Jace met her gaze. You already jumped off the throne. And I will never sit on it again, she replied softly. The anchor flared. Jace felt the pull like gravity tripling. He screamed, not in pain, but in refusal. His vision blurred, stars smearing into streaks. Lasara, he shouted. She reached for him with one hand, the other slamming down on the console. I choose, she said, voice ringing with finality. The vessel's core erupted in a cascade of impossible colors. The anchor's light twisted, folding in on itself like a dying star. The interdiction cruiser convulsed. A shock wave rippled through space, throwing their ship clear as the Dominion anchor collapsed into a singularity and vanished. Silence followed, not the peaceful kind, the stunned, disbelieving kind. Jace slumped back in his chair, lungs burning. Did we just win? He asked. Lysara stared at the empty void, where the cruiser had been. Her eyes glimmered, not with triumph, but with loss. I have severed myself from my empire, she said. Every mind I once touched is now beyond my reach. You saved my life, Jace said, and doomed my people to uncertainty, she replied. The console beside her flickered, displaying fragmented signals. Dominion fleets halting mid-jump, governors arguing, systems slipping into disarray. They will fracture without a unifying will, she said. Some will rise, others will burn. Jace absorbed that in silence. HFY Sci-Fi tales always celebrated humanity as the chaos factor. He was starting to understand the cost. So what now? He asked quietly. Lysara turned to him. Now, she said, I learned how to rule without a throne. The ship drifted through the wreckage field, silent witness to a battle no one else would ever fully understand. But Jace felt it in his bones. The galaxy had shifted, and it was all his fault. The silence after the battle was not relief. It was grief. The ship drifted between frozen shards of what had once been the Dominion's most advanced cruiser, its remains slowly spiraling into the dark. Jace watched in numb awe as fragments the size of cities tumbled past, like dead stars. The mini-hook was Lysara's stillness. She stood at the forward viewport, hands folded, face unreadable. The glow in her skin had dimmed, constellations fading into faint embers. You're losing your light, Jace said before he could stop himself. She did not turn. I am losing my choir. He frowned. You're what? The voices, she replied. The billions of minds I carried. They are silent now. It is as if an ocean has been drained from my soul. He had no response to that. There was no salvage manual for dethroned alien god queens. The ship's systems chimed, alerting them to incoming transmissions. Not Dominion-coded. Civilian. Distress beacons flaring across nearby systems, like flares in a storm. Lysara's fingers twitched. Already, she whispered. They feel the void. The console projected fragmented scenes. Border colonies arguing with local governors, defense grid stalling, entire worlds unsure whose voice to obey. The empire she'd held together with a single will was unraveling in real time. Jace watched her carefully. You didn't do this to hurt them. No, she said softly, but I did it for you. That landed harder than any explosion. Before he could answer, the ship lurched as a crude jump signature erupted nearby. A battered freighter clawed its way out of hyperspace, engines coughing plasma. A human vessel. Jace's breath caught. That's a Carradine-class hauler. Earth-built. The freighter broadcast a shaky hail. Lysara hesitated only a moment before routing it to their display. A bearded man in grease-stained coveralls appeared, eyes wide as he took in the alien cockpit. Unknown vessel. This is the Driftwood Bell requesting emergency assistance. Our core is fried and, holy hell, are you blue? Jace laughed for the first time since the Citadel. Captain, you have no idea how good it is to hear that accent. The man blinked. Jace Mercer? Jace froze. How do you know my name? Because your salvage crew has been losing their minds for 3 days, the captain said. You vanished off a contract orbit. They flagged every human channel from here to the Perseus Verge. Lysara watched the exchange with quiet intensity. We can help them, Jace said, turning to her. They're just people trying to get home. Her jaw tightened. Every interaction risks revealing us to the Dominion remnants. They're not the Dominion, he replied. They're us. She studied him, then nodded once. Bring them aboard. Minutes later, the freighter was docked alongside their vessel, its crew stumbling into the alien interior with a mixture of terror and wonder. One of them, a young woman with grease up to her elbows, stared at Lysara. Are you royalty? Lysara hesitated. Then she said something Jace never expected. I am learning, she replied. They repaired the freighter's core using parts Lysara reshaped from pure energy, while Jace guided the crew through safety protocols. The humans moved with a kind of messy efficiency that felt painfully familiar. When the Driftwood Bell finally powered up, its captain pulled Jace aside. Buddy, I don't know what kind of trouble you're in, he said quietly. but half the sector is lighting up with stories about a human walking through Dominion fire like it's rain. Jace glanced back at Lasara, who was watching the stars like she'd never really seen them before. Yeah, he said. That tracks. The freighter departed with a burst of grateful chatter, leaving them alone again in the void. Lasara finally turned to him. You reintroduce chaos into every system you touch, she said. He shrugged. We've been doing it since we crawled out of caves. A faint smile ghosted across her face. The console suddenly flashed red, new signals flooding in. Not Dominion, not human. Something else. Unknown fleet signatures, clustering at the edge of mapped space. What is that? Jace asked. Lasara's eyes darkened. The reason the high adjudicators were so desperate to maintain control. The projection resolved into a tide of alien vessels, sleek and predatory, bearing no Dominion markings. They are the Null Accord, she said, a civilization that devours empires once they fracture. Jace stared at the incoming armada. So let me get this straight. I break your empire, and now the galaxy gets eaten. Her gaze met his. No, she said. Now the galaxy must learn to fight back without a god queen to hold its hand. The first of the Null Accord ships slipped into real space, blotting out entire constellations. The Null Accord did not announce itself. It arrived like a mathematical certainty. Entire star systems dimmed on the tactical projection as their fleets emerged, precision perfect, devoid of flourish or ceremony. No grand speeches. No territorial claims. Just erasure. The mini-hook was not their numbers. It was their silence. They don't broadcast, Jace said, scanning the data Lasara pulled from subspace echoes. No propaganda. No intimidation. They don't need it, she replied. They harvest structure. Meaning is irrelevant to them. The ship drifted at the periphery of the expanding dark zone. Distress signals flooded in Dominion colonies, independent traders, human outposts. Everyone screaming into the same void. Jace rubbed his face. You still have contacts, right? Some loyalists. Someone who'll listen. Lasara hesitated. Fragments. Not the unified network I once was. Then we start fragmenting louder, he said. Humans don't win wars by being organized. We win by being everywhere. She studied him. Explain. He pulled up a map of fringe systems, places the Dominion barely governed, where smugglers, mercs, and scavengers like him survived by duct tape and audacity. These people don't wait for permission, he said. They adapt. They jury-rig. They don't need an emperor to tell them when to fight. Lasara's eyes brightened faintly, her fading constellations flickering back to life. You propose a distributed resistance. Welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Tales, he said. We're great at ruining neat plans. They began broadcasting, not a command, but a story. Jace recorded it himself, voice rough but honest. This is Jace Mercer, he said into the recorder. If you're hearing this, it means the galaxy is about to get a lot smaller. There's a species out here that eats empires. They don't care who you are, only that you exist. So if you've ever fixed a ship with scrap, fought pirates with a broken gun, or told an impossible enemy to go to hell, this is your fight. Lasara layered the message with Dominion encryption shards, pieces of her former power reframed into a call rather than an order. The response was immediate. Channels flared to life. Human captains, alien smugglers, even former Dominion officers, their mental leashes snapped, speaking in uncertain but determined tones. The ship's sensors pinged. They are converging, Lasara said. Not in fleets. In flocks. The Null Accord noticed. A ripple moved through their formation, a subtle realignment toward Jace and Lasara's coordinates. They see us as a threat vector, Lasara said. They will attempt to excise you. Jace exhaled. Story of my life. The first wave hit a frontier system 2 jumps away. The projection showed null vessels slicing through local defenses like scalpels through paper. Jace slammed his fist against the console. We need a way to hurt them. Lasara's fingers hovered over the star map, tracing patterns no human could follow. Their ships are bound by a consensus field, she said slowly. A hive logic, similar to the continuum, but colder. He looked at her sharply. You can reach it. I can brush it, she said, but without my Dominion links, it would destroy me. He didn't hesitate. Then don't do it alone. They jumped into the heart of the threatened system as the Null Accord began their harvest. Local defenders were being methodically erased, their formations collapsing under silent, perfect assault. Jace felt the pressure build the moment they entered sensor range. An alien logic probing, dissecting, trying to model him. Now, he said. Lysara closed her eyes. He placed a hand over hers. Together, they reached. Not into command structures, into refusal. Jace remembered every human broadcast he'd ever heard that started with "We shouldn't be able to win this." Lysara layered that chaos over the Null Accord's pristine consensus. The effect was immediate. Null ships faltered mid-maneuver, their flawless coordination stuttering as contradictory possibilities flooded their hive mind. They are experiencing doubt, Lysara gasped. Jace laughed breathlessly. Welcome to being human. The local defenders rallied, seizing the opening. Missiles and improvised weapons slammed into Null hulls that had never needed armor before. But the feedback tore through Lysara. She cried out, collapsing against the console. He caught her. Hey, I've got you. The Null Accord adapted fast. Their formations tightened, isolating the disturbance source. They're coming straight for us, Jace said, eyes on the closing vectors. Lysara forced herself upright, face pale. I cannot hold the fracture for long. He met her gaze. You don't have to. Just long enough. The first human reinforcement flotilla dropped into the system, a chaotic spray of mismatched ships. Across the channel, voices shouted, cursed, laughed. The galaxy was answering, and the Null Accord was about to learn what it meant to face a species that refused to make sense. The battle did not look like war. It looked like a riot in the laws of physics. Human gunships dove between Null Accord formations that had never accounted for stupidity as a tactical variable. Smugglers fired mining lasers at targets designed to ignore weapons. Former Dominion cruisers, now flying under no banner at all, broke ranks to shield refugee convoys without waiting for orders. The mini-hook was the Null Accord's first mistake. They tried to optimize. Lysara leaned heavily on Jace as they watched the system-wide brawl unfold. Her breathing was shallow, each effort to fracture the hive mind carving something out of her. They are reconfiguring their consensus, she said. They will isolate us from the network. Then we make the mess bigger, Jace replied. He opened a channel to the growing human-led flotilla. The image that appeared was a patchwork of faces, pilots in patched jackets, alien mercenaries, even a Dominion officer who still wore half his ceremonial armor like a relic of a forgotten life. Listen up, Jace said. They're trying to think around us. So stop being predictable. A pause, then a chorus of confused acknowledgments. Split your formations. Improvise. Break every rule you were ever taught. If your sensors say do A, you do B, and then throw a wrench into C. The Null Accord reacted instantly, their ships adjusting to every known doctrine. And then the flotilla didn't follow any. Jace watched as a human freighter ignited its cargo of raw or mid-run, blinding a Null wing with an artificial sunburst. Another ship cut power completely and drifted dead through a barrage, then reactivated inside enemy formation and fired point-blank. They are introducing non-algorithmic variables, Lysara whispered in awe. The Accord has no precedent for this. The hive mind shuddered visibly on the projection, entire swaths of Null vessels hesitating, recalculating, losing their immaculate synchronization. But adaptation was their nature. They're isolating you, Jace said as the pressure spiked again. He could feel the Null logic, trying to build a model of his mind. Lysara screamed, collapsing to her knees. Jace, she gasped. They are learning. They will find a way to excise the anomaly. He knelt beside her, gripping her shoulders. Then we don't let them define the anomaly. He did something reckless. He opened every channel he could reach. Galaxy, he said into the void, voice breaking with urgency. If you're fighting out there, don't fight to win. Fight to confuse. Be wrong on purpose. Make no sense. That's how you beat a machine that thinks perfection is a weapon. The response was not silence. It was laughter. Human, alien, terrified, defiant laughter echoing across subspace. Null Accord ships began to fracture their own formations as the sheer unpredictability overwhelmed their consensus field. They started colliding, firing at phantoms, hesitating where no hesitation should exist. Lysara stared at the projection, tears streaking down her glowing skin. You are teaching them to doubt themselves. That's humanity's superpower, Jace said softly. We don't know how to be anything else. The Null Accord pivoted. A massive central construct unfolded from their core formation, a node so dense it bent the starfield around it. They are focusing all processing power, Lysara said. If it completes integration, it will override the fracture. Jace looked at the monstrous node. Then we hit it with everything. Not enough, she replied. It requires a conceptual collapse, a contradiction so fundamental it cannot reconcile. He closed his eyes. Then he remembered the day he'd lost his brother on a mining run, how the system log said he was dead, while Jace had sworn he felt his hand slip from his own, how reality had insisted on an ending he refused to accept. He opened his eyes. What if the contradiction is us? He asked. She followed his gaze. Human and sovereign, chaos and order, life and refusal to stop, he added. Understanding dawned across her features. They moved together to the center of the ship. Lysara placed her hands over the core interface. Jace pressed his palms against hers. They reached into the fracture one last time, not as ruler and anomaly, but as two minds that should never have aligned. The null node pulsed, trying to analyze them. They did not let it. They flooded the hive mind with incompatible truths, authority that refused to command, defiance that refused to hate, survival without permission. The node convulsed. Across the system, Null Accord ships lost cohesion, their perfect logic unraveling into isolated, silent hulks. The projection cleared. They had done it, but Lysara sagged against him, light dimming rapidly. Jace, she whispered, my connection to myself is failing. His heart lurched. No, don't you dare go cosmic on me now. She smiled faintly. You have shown me what it means to choose, even if the choice ends me. Outside, the first cheers echoed across the comms. Inside, Jace held the collapsing Star Queen and prayed to a universe he no longer trusted. Silence, not the calm after a storm, but the quiet of something ancient reshaping itself. Jace felt it in his bones, the void stretching around their ship, alive and patient. The Null Accord's hive had shattered, their consensus gone, their fleets drifting like lost ghosts. But Lysara, she did not move. The mini-hook was the fragility of the victory. Jace gripped her shoulders, shaking her lightly. Lysara, talk to me. Her eyes flickered open, faint constellations pulsing weakly. I am fragmented, she whispered. The Dominion's threads are gone. I am not whole. He searched her face, seeing not a goddess, not an alien ruler, but something profoundly human, something fragile. He had seen humanity survive the impossible, but he had never seen one life hold the weight of entire stars before. You're still here, he said softly, and that's enough. She shook her head slightly. Enough for what? The fleets, the systems, the people, they will look for me. They will demand order. And I. Her voice faltered. I cannot give it. Jace's mind raced. HFY Sci-Fi Tales had always celebrated humans as scrappy survivors, improvisers against the impossible. Then don't give it, he said firmly. Give them choice. Give them life, not control. Lysara studied him. Slowly, the tension in her shoulders eased, and a faint smile touched her lips. You are impossible. Yeah, he said with a crooked grin. I get that a lot. Outside, the stars seemed brighter now. The Null Accord fleets were drifting in disarray, but scattered signals from the reassembled human-led flotilla were already sending warnings to the wider galaxy. Systems once under Dominion control were reaching out, hesitant, unsure, but alive. We've done more than survive, Jace said. We've changed the rules. She looked at him, eyes glimmering with soft light. Yes, but the cost. He took her hand. The cost is still worth it. You showed me galaxies. I showed you humans. Together, maybe we can find a way to fix what's broken. She breathed deeply, regaining strength from his stubborn heartbeat, from the human chaos he carried like armor. Perhaps, she said, perhaps it is time for a new path. One where I do not dominate, but guide, only when necessary. He laughed softly, HFY style, improvisation over domination. Her fingers brushed against his chest. A pulse, faint but alive, connected them. Not chains, not psychic bindings, but trust, respect, something she had never given anyone before. They began navigating the fractured systems, choosing which colonies to contact, which fleets to guide, and which to leave free. Each decision sent ripples outward, small chaos multiplying into hope. One day, a message arrived on their channel, faint, distorted, but unmistakable. A Dominion colonel, formerly loyal to Lasara, had rallied her forces not out of obedience, but because she had chosen to inspire instead of command. See, Jace said, you don't need to rule with chains. You just need to be human enough to care. Lasara's gaze softened, constellations flickering with new vibrancy. I never expected a human to teach me this. You didn't expect me to survive your mind space either, he replied. Seems we both underestimated each other. They shared a quiet laugh, and for the first time since he had been pulled from the orbit of his salvage run, Jace felt like he belonged somewhere, not because he was in the middle of an empire, or because he survived the impossible, but because he had been chosen, and chosen wisely. The Star Queen, sovereign of billions, now looked more like a companion than a ruler, and he felt something stir in her eyes. Curiosity, vulnerability, and dare he hope? Trust. Where do we go from here? He asked. Forward, she said simply. We rebuild. We teach. We let the galaxy remember that defiance is not weakness. That choice is power. Jace smiled, HFY style. She laughed softly, a sound that felt like stars settling back into orbit. Yes, HFY style. They rose together, hands brushing, not in possession, not in hierarchy, but as partners facing a universe that had tested every fiber of their being. And in the distance, beyond fractured fleets and shattered empires, a new dawn spread across the void. Not the dawn of one ruler or one species, but a dawn of choice, of life thriving in chaos, of humans daring to defy the impossible. The galaxy had shifted irreversibly, and Jace Mercer, the mechanic, the human anomaly, looked at Lasara and thought, maybe the universe had been waiting for someone like him all along. Hold on, before we finish, I want to know, what would you do if you were suddenly called to stand beside a being who could move stars, and they chose you to change the fate of a galaxy? Answer below in the comments. I love seeing your thoughts. The ship drifted through the remains of what had been a battlefield, but now, instead of fear, it was filled with hope. The Star Queen no longer ruled with chains, and the human who should have been a servant no longer served anyone. But together, they had sparked the change the galaxy needed. If you enjoyed this journey, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to HFY Soundscape for more epic tales of humanity defying the impossible.